Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited. I'm excited every week, but I'm just so excited to talk to Patty. I will admit that I didn't know much about her farm. I adminned for her show this weekend, so I linked her over, and then you stay and watch in case there are technical things. And I was just fascinated by all the things that she was doing. So I'm really excited to hear about all of that. So let's start. Introduce yourself, tell us where you are, and just a little briefly about your farm, and then we're going to dig in.
Sure. So I'm Patty Williams, and I am from Aker Fiber Farm, AKER, Fiber Farm in Enfield Center, New Hampshire. We're about 2 hours south of Canada and right on the Vermont border. So it's a nice little spot with some lakes and trees and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. So,
Um,
so tell us about your farm. Big,
yeah,
small?
it's small as far as um like statewide, like as far as like countrywide goes, we're pretty small. We run between 20 and 40 ewes a year. We have 50 acres. Every time I get up to 40 sheep, my husband's like, you gotta cut back, Patty. And I'm like, oh, fine. And I make the hard decisions. But and then but as far as statewide, where I guess we're considered a medium, there's a lot of just 3 and 4 sheep farms around here, and not many flocks get over 200. So unlike out west where it's thousands, New England tends to have really small flocks. So at
Right.
20 to 40 we're considered medium, which is always
Yeah,
exciting.
that seems like a lot of sheep to me.
Yeah, well, not as many if you have a couple of thousand, right?
For sure. Yeah, we usually have
Yeah.
10 or less. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So tell us about the sheep.
Yeah. So we have Corriedale sheep, which was developed in Australia and New Zealand back in the early 1800s. Kind of ran into the same problem in the two countries about the same time. They had the merinos to eat all of these thick, luscious green grasses. And then one country had Lincolns and the other had Leicesters to eat all the twiggy stuff. But where stuff meld in the middle, neither sheep would eat. So what they did
Oh,
was they started breeding them together. And what they came up with was the Corriedale. So they're pretty popular worldwide, in South America, and in out west. There are some big ranches out west, and throughout Europe, and even some a little bit in Africa. And of course, New Zealand, there's a bunch of them there. And so we got into them because my husband and I were government contractors down in Virginia, and we weren't zoned for sheep. I mean, come on, why not? It's Fairfax County, only 1.5 million people in the county, not zoned for sheep. But we knew we wanted to come up north and back up north, and start a sheep farm. So we went out to a flock out in Lexington, Virginia, and I just fell in love with the fleeces. I learned how to spin when I was knee high to a grasshopper. Like I couldn't reach the orifice to draft and treadle at the same time. I was too short. So my aunt did one and I would do the other. And the fleeces were they reminded me of a good pickup truck. It was soft enough. It's soft enough to wear next to the skin when bred properly. My microns usually like 25 to 28.
okay.
Um, but they can be eaten. They grow big. Like my ewes are 150 pounds. My rams are close to 300. And so you can eat them if you want. But that fleece is just, it's great for beginners. You can really draw it out for a long time and it grabs. But if you drop a stitch, it's not a runner. It doesn't just run
Okay.
right back. And I knew that I wanted to work with folks that were either younger, or didn't have the dexterity. I have two special needs kids. And so, we've helped one-armed people learn how to spin, and we've worked with knitters, we've worked with the blind, we've worked with all sorts of different special needs here on the farm, whether it's autism or Down syndrome or, just mental development delays. And Corriedale just really lends itself well to that. Plus, you can make anything you want with it. It's strong enough to do socks. But it's, it can be for open work or you can wear it around your neck.
Sounds like
Or at least I can.
it's not fussy.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I call it the pickup truck because it can just kind of hang in there.
I love that.
Yeah, like that old Ford that just kind of goes down that dusty trail.
Right?
Yeah, totally like that.
That's great.
Um, and then when we first got started, we had Angora bunnies. And I just found that they didn't do as well up here in New Hampshire. They had quite the posh little place down in Virginia. We had air conditioning for them and heaters and all that. And so we were looking for a better counterbalance to the sheep. And that was when I learned about the linsey woolsey cloth. And I started to learn about linen. And I was like, oh, this is it. And so we started growing small pots of they're like this little pots of flax with only like a tablespoon of seed in it. I would sprinkle it around. And then it just kind of kept growing and kind of growing as we went. And now a couple of times a year, we have volunteers that come to help us process. We'll get between 8 and 20 people together to help us process it.
So
Um,
how much are you growing? Like
it's
an
one of the
acre
yeah,
or
so one of the great things about flax is that a pound of seed grows in a 10 by 10 plot. So to give you an idea, this is half a pound of seed right here.
okay.
Yeah, so this would go in a 5 by 5 foot plot. So like half a booth space if anyone goes out
Oh yeah,
and has a 10 by 10. So two of these would fit in a 10 by 10 booth space.
yeah. Okay.
And so what you do is you till it up, and you try to get as much grass and everything out of it, and then you just broadcast it. You don't like plant it in rows. You
Okay.
just literally take it in your hands and kind of go like this along. And then I just put a little bit of soil back over it. And I mean, less than an inch. Flax doesn't have any root structure to it. So it all has to grow up together in order to hold each other up.
Oh. Huh.
And one of the things that we found is that the stuff on the inside, so you have your square, right? The stuff on the inside of the square, part of my phone turning on, the stuff on the inside of the square is softer than the things on the outside of the square. And my theory is that the outside is working harder to stay up because it's very wispy. It kind of looks like almost like wheat in a field, just very, very wispy. So that broadcasting just helps it all to stay up. And then so we grow, oh geez, I think we're up to 6 or 8 pounds now.
Okay.
So yeah, we do 6 or 8 10 by 10 plots throughout. I don't think that's even half an acre yet.
Sure.
It's like a hundred and I think it's 120 pounds of seed to seed an acre, a full acre.
So do you know what the yield of that is then as far as, I don't know, yarn goes?
Yeah, it's so funny. Because you can go back in history and look at logs and you'll see like 1812 got this much tow, got this much line. Tow is the short fibers. When we separate them out, you get short, coarse fibers, and then you get longer fibers. That's called line, and that's where the word linen comes from. And so that's the stuff that we use next to our skin, hence the word linen. It's soft. Hopefully that's what you get to use next to your skin, right? If it was
Right.
colonial times, you might still be stuck with tow.
Right.
And the tow is what we used to use for the burlap sacks and the grain sacks, the cordage, your rope for your bed, for your bed rope, to hopefully keep your mattress up,
Right.
to tie up your horse with, anything that you needed cordage from. So yeah, so it depends on the year, right? And the weather, it's horrible. And that's the way it goes. And yeah, it's perennial. It's I get perennial and annual mixed up. But so what happens is we have to set part of our plot. I usually have 1 or 2 plots a year that I set aside to go to seed, because if a seed develops, it's really coarse fiber, it's really coarse linen. The whole thing is like shot as far as making a good line or a good linen comes from. So we put 1 or 2 plots aside a year to develop into seed, knowing that we're going to sell that specifically to people who want to do either just like museum type stuff, where they don't really care. They're not fiber artists. They're not going to turn it into anything. They're just going to demonstrate how to ret, how to break, how to go through the process. And then they're going to either pitch it or just give it to somebody. And then the other stuff we have to actually pull. What happens is it takes about 3 months for it to grow. And it gets about a third of the way yellow, the whole stalk. You'll see it. It'll be about a third of the way yellow. And what it is, all of a sudden I go, everybody stop. And my kids, unfortunately, have, oh no. And they know because I've been telling them, right? It's flax time. And we all go out and we all start pulling because it has no roots. You don't have to cut it. You can just pull it up really easy. And then we make haystacks, and we just like pile it all up and put some cordage around it. And we dry it all out. And then at that point, it can be stored for quite a while. I've seen stuff back to the 1800s in museums and things like that. Yeah, it's totally wild that a plant would stay that long. But as long as it doesn't get wet again, it's good. And then you have to do what's called a retting process. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can ret, but ret means to rot. So what you basically do is, back in the day, we used to put it in like ponds and rivers and things like that. And we'd put rocks down on top of it to weigh it down so it just didn't float downstream. The problem with that is it gets really sandy. And that gets in, and then you're processing sand along with everything else. So I use old bathtub in the backyard, and I still have to put rocks on it to soak it down, because otherwise it floats up. But it makes it a little bit nicer. And what we actually are doing is growing a fungus onto the stalks of each individual flax wisp. That's what I call it, but it's each individual plant. And when you water ret, which is what the bathtub thing is called, you get like a blonde color. And that's where the phrase towhead comes from, is that blonde color. I know these are older words, like we don't call kids towheads anymore, but we used to call really blonde kids towheads. And then if you lay it on your lawn, my husband so loves me, if you lay it out on the lawn, and I'll put sticks on it, and then the dew will get on it, and then I flip it over, and then the next day the dew will get on it, and then I flip it back over, and I keep doing that. That creates a silvery color. And that's where the word flaxen hair, for ladies with older ladies now with their gray hair, they used to call it flaxen hair. Yeah, there you go. You have now flaxen hair. And that's where that comes from. And then you can do a mixture and call it, it's called snow retting. And I tried that one year, and decided New England, or at least New Hampshire, isn't the best place for it. Because it would melt, and then it would compact down on top of the flax and kind of create like this ice barrier on top of it. So I couldn't control it as well. But if you try it, mark where you put the snow, where you put it in the snow. Because I tried it. Yeah. So bad. Got like, yeah. Oh yeah. We were supposed to get like 6 inches of powdery fluff. I was like, oh, great. This is perfect. And then we got 18 inches of this like wet, heavy, and so my husband's looking out the window, and there I am with the shovel and the dog, trying to, the dog's digging. I'm like, where is it? I was off. So that didn't work out so well. But if you mark it, yes, dear, bye.
The muddy dog is hiding.
So you have to mark it. It definitely, if you're going to do the snow.
That's great. Okay, so I want to come back and ask a couple of things. So I think what I heard you say is that for the softer, you need to pick it before it goes to seed.
Yeah. You don't want it to go to seed.
So the only reason you're letting it go to seed is truly to seed, to get flax.
Yes, absolutely, to get those seeds. Yeah, so you can plant for next year.
Okay. And then you're drying it then to wet it again.
Yeah, you read it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure that's what you were saying.
Yep. I know, it seems so silly to dry it out just to get it wet once again,
But
but
it just has to go through
it
that
has to
process,
go
right?
through that process. Yeah, I tried to go right from one to the other, right from pulling it to retting it, and the fungus doesn't grow nearly as well on it. And it really it just doesn't work.
So what is the fungus the color, or is there
Yeah,
something else
the,
that the fungus provides then?
yeah. So what it does is it breaks down the stalk. So if we took a cross section, this pencil's a great thing. I don't know if you can see it. If you took a cross section of the flax, it would look like this. The color on the inside of the pencil would be all of the fibers on the inside of the flax.
Okay,
And this brown part would be the husk on the outside. So we
okay,
grow that fungus all on the brown part, so it's easier to break off. Otherwise, what would happen is it would just bend like a card. It would just bend like this. But
okay.
because I'm sorry, I should have brought some
Does that
flax
make the
over.
outside crisp then?
Yeah, it makes it
Okay,
really crisp and hard. And what we're able to do is go like this, and we're able to start to extract all of those little fibers that are on the inside.
okay, because the
Um,
inside holds together then
Yep.
with
Yeah,
okay.
it's called breaking. And we actually have this thing that kind of opens and closes like this. Neighbors just love me. And so it's not a quiet day around here. You lay the
Term.
flax in and you just, whack, whack, whack. And what it does is it breaks down that husk that you've rotted off. It doesn't rot off. It just you build that fungus and because it's called to rot is means retting is to rot.
Okay,
And you lay it out and you dry it out again, and of course you can store it there, but then you've got to work on getting that husk off. And so we start by breaking it. Yeah.
okay, so the husk is off and then what?
Yep. So the next step is it's never completely off by breaking. So we do what's called scutching, and you take a wooden knife, and you have a scotch board, which is a board that comes up like this, and you lay the flax over, and you
Okay,
just take that knife and you rub it like this. And what it does, because sometimes, it's like vegetable matter in a fleece, where it gets down in there, and until you actually start carding it, you can't even tell that down inside there is a piece of hay or what have you, right? So the scutching just rubs basically the rest of the husk off.
okay.
Then you take it over to what's called a hackle. And hackles are literally a bed of nails. Yeah. And what they do is they take the tines and they bend them closer together.
Okay.
And so you take that, it kind of looks like cards or combs, but instead of nice straight lines, they're all staggered. And sometimes
And
on the
it's
older
big,
ones,
right?
yeah, well, they're pretty good sized. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
but
got
like
some
the
that are like
tines are pretty
this.
big too.
Oh yeah, like they use like old railroad nails or something like
Right.
that. It's
And
it's
it's
yeah.
at the
Tetanus is like one of the few shots that I stay up to date on because I use all
oh,
rusty
me
old
too. Yeah.
equipment. Yeah. And so
Everything's
so
a
you,
medieval torture device.
oh, it totally is. It totally is. And so you take the flax, absolutely. You take it and you just flop it over and you just draw it through all those tines. And it gets a little bit more of the husk off. It aligns the fibers and it separates the toe, the short stuff from the line, which is the long stuff. And
So
now
toe and line are both part of the middle.
yeah, yep, they're in it and they're together, but they're different lengths.
Okay.
The toe is usually, sometimes only 3 or 4 inches long. And the line can get, 9 inches in staple length,
Do
sometimes
you
longer.
use the toe for something?
We do. So we have a lot of survivalists that reach out to us. And I love these guys and gals. They're so resourceful. They'll actually make their own cordage using it. And they will use it for packing material inside of muskets. And I just started working with a lady up here. She got a hold of a gentleman who has been using mats in order to grow microgreens on them. And we discovered that he's been using linen or tow, and it hasn't had a local source. So we've made mats I gave her the fiber, and she's made these grow mats. They're literally about this big, flat,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
and she's given them to him to test out. So we're hoping that will work well. And then the line, we either sell as strix, which is fiber ready to be spun, or we go straight into spinning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have examples?
Uh,
That's okay.
not of yarn, but
Okay.
I did, I don't know. Oh, here, let me move her forward. This one here, this is a linen skirt that we made.
Oh, wow.
So it has the lace at the bottom. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then, oh, I do have some singles. Oh no, I got a skein right here. This wasn't in the show, so don't tell anyone.
Wait,
But this is
this
the
is
yarn. This
Okay.
is the yarn here. Yeah. So this
Just
is a
natural.
pink. Yeah, nope, this is pink
Oh,
and a
okay.
natural. So this, I always spin this stuff really thin. So the brown in there, I don't know if you can see it. The brown in there is the natural. And the pink is my light is a little bright on the side, but the pink is is dyed.
So when you spin, you get it wet again, right?
Yeah, you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
The reason why people add water to it is because there's no barbs. You know how, like, the reason why wool sticks together so well is that the creatine builds up in the socket, and then it pushes up, and that's what creates that little barb on our hairs and any protein fibers hairs,
Like
whether
a scale kind of.
yeah, exactly, just like a scale. And so that helps the fiber to twist and to hold together. But plants don't have that. It's a plant.
Oh, right.
And so if it gets a little hairy, I just dampen my fingers and draw it out. There's no reason to like sit there with a sponge and have your lap all soaking wet and get all the water getting all over your wheel. I actually take a little bit of wool that I'm not using for whatever reason, and I put it down in the bottom of a cup with just a little bit of water
Okay.
and just dampen my fingers. It's kind of like when we needed stamps and we had to lick stamps and envelopes, and you had that little thing that you put your yes, exactly, that you just damped your finger on. It's very much like that. And you know, weather has a lot to do with that. If you're doing spinning in a really dry area, it's going to need a little bit more water to help it stick. But if it's a damp day, like I love spinning on a really wet, when it's raining and that's that just downpour and you're like outside, but it helps all that moisture and humidity in the air helps that stick together. So I use less water on my yarn, because what you're doing is you're drying out the pectins, like in jelly. Is you're drying out those pectins, and it can make the flax feel hard and stiff. Yeah, and so what we do to soften it back up now, don't think wool, don't do this to wool, like take your wool rules and put it in a box and then put it up on a shelf, because we're very mean. That after we have spun it is the first time we scour it, right? We haven't scoured yet. Normally you do that, right? And wool at the very beginning. Well, so we take it and we put it in a pot of boiling water with harsh detergent, like with Oxy, the harshest detergent that I can find out there. I put it in and it becomes like this swamp. I mean, it is gross. People walk in and they're like, "Oh, what are you cooking?" I'm like, "Flax," you know, as I'm holding it up. Like, it's
So this is
dark
after it's spun.
after it's spun. Yeah, it's not just setting the twist, it's the first time we're actually scouring it. And you just keep going. I'll put, sometimes if I put too much soap in, I'll just transfer it to another pot of boiling water. But if I need to, I'll add a little bit of soap. It usually doesn't take much, but it breaks all of those pectins back down and it makes it soft again. And you know, some people will even pop it in their freezer, and because the harsh temperatures help with that as well. I don't go that far, but I will whack it when I got it. You should get to the point where the water's clear, And then I hang it to dry, and then I'll just whack it against my porch. I'm just out there whacking it away. Yeah, you really, you just don't follow the wool
Anger
rules.
management.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it totally is. And then you can put it in your washer and your dryer, and the more it tumbles around in there, the softer it gets.
Right, which is
So
what
yeah.
you hear about linen fabric, right? It just
Yeah.
gets softer with use.
It does. It does. We've actually had to reknit samples because they've gotten really, really soft, and we wanted to show people what it was like as soon as it was done.
Okay.
So when theirs wasn't that soft, they wouldn't think that they've done something wrong.
Okay.
And yeah. So I don't put my yarn in the washer, in the dryer. I wait until I have a finished product, whether I'm weaving or knitting or
Okay.
crocheting with it. And then after that, I just throw it in the washer and the dryer. Dryer balls are great for it, because that constant pounding.
Pounding, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the whole flax process.
Wow.
And currently there's no mills in the United States. When we started getting mills and factories going, we discovered the cotton gin, and we forgot all about flax. So it just fell to the wayside. Well, I mean, it makes sense economically. The North America had the best cotton plants in the world. We all covet Egyptian cotton now, but they came over here, got our cotton plant, and brought it back over there. I mean, it's its own entity now, but
Right.
it started from ours. We kind of missed the economic boat on that one.
Huh. So are there places that do mill?
There's some in Russia, Belgium, some museum piece ones in Ireland. Funny enough, you're not allowed to ret on a commercial wise in Ireland anymore. It started to really wreak havoc on their river and pond ecosystems. So they'll allow people to do it for like demonstration purposes, but not on a commercial basis. But they still weave with it quite a bit over there. And then up in Nova Scotia, there's Taproot. And so if you're ever up in Nova Scotia, Taproot is a great place to go visit because they're just in Canada and have a mill. And it really stinks because they're only about 4 hours from us, but we're not allowed to bring plants over the border.
Oh, sure.
So we would have to export flax to Canada to import flax linen yarn back. And yeah, exactly. But the Northern New England Fiber Shed just got a grant, a micro grant, to see whether or not it will be feasible to buy some of Taproot's equipment. So I have been interviewing with them and talking with them, and we are really, really hopeful that that's going to, it is way exciting. Even if they have just part of the process,
right.
Even if they just had a break or a hat and a hackle, I mean, that would be grand just there.
Right.
An electric hackle would be just amazing.
Is there enough production here to support a mill?
That's what their micro grant is all about.
Okay.
Is to see whether or not it makes sense economically. Yeah. So fingers crossed that it's all gonna happen. Yeah.
You think when you started this, you were going to be an expert in flax?
No, not at all. Not at all. I started by going down to the folk school because I was in Virginia when we started our farm. We started the added value products first. And we bought all of these fleeces out from this farm in Lexington that we eventually bought their whole stock from. They were in their 90s and didn't want to breed sheep anymore. I can't imagine why. Yep. So they were originally government contractors in New England who had moved to Virginia to start a sheep farm. We were government contractors in Virginia moving back to New England to start a sheep farm. So they just became wonderful mentors of ours. Just there was too much in common there not to. And so we used to send out the fleeces we bought them all and sent them out to Zeilingers and became comb top. And then we would hand dye all of the comb top, and we would hand spin it all. And when we got up to some ungodly amount of yardage, I said, okay, we need to look at a mill to help us. And here I am hand spinning all of this flax now. So it's like, oh, well, I don't seem to be able to get away from it. But it frees me up. The wool mill frees me up to be able to, otherwise we wouldn't be able to do both.
Right. Do you have to have a special wheel to spin flax?
No. So back in the day, we had what's called a flax wheel. And we called it a flax wheel because it had a distaff attached to it.
Okay.
You do not have to spin flax on a distaff. I do not. I really love to just toss it over my shoulders and I just pull out a couple of strands at a time. I spin very thin. And so you can certainly, like anything, if you want it thicker, you just take a lot more of the fiber out at a time. But I really like to do it straight. I think sometimes if you're new at it, by doing a distaff, it basically makes it into roving. This is how I relate it to, so people get it, is that when it's straight, I think of it as combed, because that's basically what a hackle is doing. It's combing it, it's making it straight. But when you do dress a distaff, what you do is you kind of like lay out the fibers, you hold it down on a table or your lap, and you slowly drag it almost like it's a cobweb. And then you switch and you go back across. And as you create those layers, it's crisscrossing over on itself.
Okay.
And then you roll the distaff up into that. And so you end up with this pole and you end up with this cobweb of linen line that's around it.
Okay.
And so all of those fibers are pulling and going in together. And I think it just helps it to stick together a little bit. So I really recommend it for beginners when you're first trying it. And don't do the whole like anything. Don't just grab that whole thing and try to put it on the distaff. You're going to drive yourself nuts. Yeah. Just pull a little bit, like a little clump out,
Okay.
and then put it on your distaff. Yeah. But I think that's why we had the flax wheel. And also because we tend to weave with it, we made it very thin. It's very strong. So we made it pretty thin. And the orifice is pretty tiny. I mean, they're teeny tiny on those. Okay. You're not going to make art yarn on them. It won't fit through the orifice. But we had the great wheel, or the walking wheels, for wool. So that they kind of ended up with their two specialities. And then of course we developed the Lindsay Woolsey cloth from it.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of
So
fun.
the yarn that you were selling this weekend was totally linen?
Yep, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of it had color.
Yes. Yep.
So you do some botanical dyeing with that?
Yeah, so we do either fiber reactive dyes for plants, or we do natural, and sometimes we do a mixture of the two. So I like to dye, I'm a little different in this, in that I like to dye all of our singles first, and then I make more color by putting different colors together.
Sure.
And so it becomes this marled look. So I might, grab a cochineal strand, and I don't, also it's more forgiving, because if something doesn't come out quite the way I want, I'm not like, oh God, that's so awful, I have to over dye it. I can just put it with something else and it either tones it down or oh, I really like that, and it brings it out, help it to pop. So it's a great way to do that. So I tend to use madder root and cochineal. And I tend to use, of course, indigo, and then black walnut I can find around here a lot.
Okay.
And
So
a question just popped up, but I'm not quite sure I understood it. Something about wood.
Okay, so Margot asked if flax was perennial, or do you have to
plant? I already answered that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Applied like wood.
I'm guessing it's wool. She's saying
wool. Sorry, wool. That makes so much more sense. No, I mean, well, kind of, like wool, you can use this, a nice thick plushy single, but linen is a lot stronger than wool. I mean, it is strong, which is why we use it as rope. And for the grain sacks where it really has to hold up. Um, and I mean, like I can take linen, wool thread and, you put your hands far enough apart, you can break it. I can't do that with a linen. I have to go and grab a pair of scissors. So it doesn't have to be plied.
So it could be a
But
single.
it absolutely can be a single,
Okay.
but
And it holds
sometimes,
together as a single.
oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And because you're using the water to help draw out the pectins to help make it stick together.
Okay.
And sometimes what I prefer to do is that I ply it because I spin so thin in order to make it more appealing to knitters. I mean, the weavers always, because they use it for warp, right? They tend to use singles or a 2-ply for their warps. But I mean, you would be using double zeros or triple zeros. I mean, you'd be using toothpicks in order to, it's so thin in order to knit with it. So we'll make a 5, 6, even sometimes an 8-ply with it to make sure we can go one way or the other.
That thin.
That it's that thin. Yeah.
And is it always spun that thin?
Well, it depends on you. Like you can certainly make it thicker. If you've got a project specifically for you and you want to make it thicker, you can. I've got some here that I spun and it's on my bobbin. So you can see how thin it goes. And I broke it. Yay, I broke it. But it's pretty hard. And as soon as you get these plied, it's even hard. Well, of course it's harder, right? It's plied. But yeah, it's
okay.
So this is a 2-ply, and that's what I would send off to be a warp.
Okay.
If you were going to do your tea towels or something along those lines. And weavers, I am so sorry. I always get the weights mixed up, whether it's a 10 over a 2 or I'll admit I'm not a warp person. So I tend to focus more towards the knitting weights. But I try to get it all up to a lace weight. And then we custom order a lot for the weavers. They'll give us a shout and say, hey, can I get a 2-ply for a warp? And we'll either send them a single or a 2-ply.
So you'll custom spin that then?
Yep. Yeah.
And
if we don't have
everything
it
is
kicking around.
hand-spun.
Yes, everything has
Gotta
to
wrap
be.
my
There's
brain
no,
around this.
yeah, there's no mills.
You
Yeah.
talked about volunteers.
Yep.
Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we get visitors that come out that want to learn about the knitting or the flax process. And so they'll help with breaking, they'll help with sketching, and they'll help with hackling as they learn the process in exchange for labor, which is
Nice.
great. Yeah, we provide lunch and yeah. So
do you have a regular group that comes, or do you just
sometimes it's people that have been here in the past. Other times it's folks that are coming along. I mean, we've had just like school teachers come out, but we've also had professionals. We had an accountant out once, and he had no fiber arts experience whatsoever, but heard about this process. I had a lady come out. She works for our government, and was an absolute hoot. She's originally from Norway, and she takes pictures for her family calendar. And she thought that the equipment and all of that would be really cool for her family calendar. So she goes ahead and she's taking pictures and doing the process, and she stopped and take a picture. I'll be honest, Kim, I have a saying: if it works, it's legal. And that's a saying that I picked up in one of my first flax classes that I took with Cassie Dixon down at the folk school in North Carolina. Because flax tools, these flax tools didn't get invented. We call them antiques now, but when the Egyptians were making flax, flax tunics, and the Vikings were making flax sails and all of that, we didn't have flax breaks and flax hackles and all of that sort of stuff. So I I not only teach people how to use the traditional, what we consider the traditional stuff now, but we also use everything that you're not supposed to. We use rolling pins, we use axe handles for breaking. I have some old carders that I'll use, and some old combs. I've never tried a swinging picker before, but I think if you could somehow lock the top part back and just use the bottom part, that might work. I I think that if you use, like, if it went this way and then that way, it might start to get knotted up a little bit. Because usually what we do is we put it over, and then we pull it through, and we put it over and we pull it through. So it's always going in the same direction. But worst case, you throw a little in there. If it works, let me know. And if it, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Throw it in a pot.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, well, then, you've got something to start your stove with, or the next, barbecue. It's very flammable, very flammable. It is very, very flammable. So you need to be a little careful with that. But yeah, that's the whole process. Yeah. We do it a lot around and around. Yeah. A box picker might work better. Yeah.
Oh, so that you could,
Yeah.
and then pick it
Yeah.
up
So you can
and
kind of pull it. Yeah. And then pull it. Yeah.
combing more
Yeah.
than
Right.
Huh.
Yeah. Then swinging. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I say try it. The only thing I have found is don't use a bouncy table on some of this stuff. Because if you're trying to break flax on a bouncy table, it doesn't break because the table just goes down and up. Everything is moving. You need a little bit of resistance. So I tend to use my porch, or my porch floor, or a wood table tends to work best. If you're going to use a rolling pin or an axe handle to whack off that husk with. It's hard to, it's hard to find the equipment. Chris from Valkyrie is part of this. So in New England, we have formed a bast fiber group on Slack, and we all talk about, and Chris from Valkyrie is exploring making new flax equipment, because
like Valkyrie combs, Valkyrie.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because he can't believe that we're all hunting around antique stores and buying blueprints and trying to make our own and these sorts of things. I found once I found a flax a scutching knife labeled as a bean curd knife, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but this is actually for scutching. And did anything else come with this? Because they sometimes mix it up. I was like, was anything else in the box? And so I was able to find some hackles and stuff like that. So that's how we find a lot of our equipment, or we happen to be somewhere and they've just got it out on the lawn, and because they found it in the attic, which is great. We find that happens in Pennsylvania quite a bit. Yeah, because there's a lot of flax that happened in
Sure.
Pennsylvania. So every now and then I'll go somewhere in Pennsylvania. I'll be like, a flax break. How can we get that in the car?
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Because among other things, it's going to be sharp.
Mhm. Yeah. Or just big and awkward. Right.
Right.
Yep.
This was lovely. So I want people to know where to find you. Do you have Facebook, Instagram? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, we got it all. So we're at so Instagram, it's at AKER_fiber_farm.
Okay.
Facebook is Aker Fiber Farm. And then for our website, it's www.akerllc.com.
Okay.
And we have linen up there now, which we don't often have. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
That is. Okay. Do you do shows, like in-person show?
Yeah. So we're hoping to do WAFA next month. We used to do WAFA on a real regular basis. And then we took a little bit of time off. I think it was just clashing with some of our in-person shows. But our next show is actually Maryland Sheep and Wool, which is the first full weekend of May. And then we're at New Hampshire Sheep and Wool, which is the second full weekend of May, 11th and 12th there. And then we're home for the summer. And then we do the Fiber Festival of New England in November, and we're at a state fair, Deerfield Fair, in the Sheep Barn for a whole week in September. And then we head to New York City every January for Vogue Knitting Live. So if you ever get a chance to go to New York City, yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're right on Times Square there. It's the only show I've ever been where I've met somebody from Chile and Peru and Ireland and Iceland and Russia and Bolivia all on the same day. Plus people from Oregon and California and 46th Street. It's amazing, absolutely amazing how everybody gets together. There were even some folks there from Rwanda and a few, different. I think they had almost every continent there this year. It's absolutely amazing. And the floor shows and the fashion shows and all that.
Wow.
yeah, it's really cool. And we put those up on our website.
Okay.
And then we teach here at the farm. But I'm also teaching with Sanborn Mills, which is kind of like the folk school down in North Carolina, only it's up here in New Hampshire. I think it's over 100-acre farm, and they are bringing blacksmith and wood turners and fiber artists and just all sorts of different things. They have lodgings and a professional chef right there on site. So you can fly into Boston, and it's about an hour north of Boston. So it's a great place to check out for workshops if you're looking for a little getaway. It's a neat place, Sanborn Mills, and the link is up on our website. And then for fun, we like to do virtual shopping tours. So if you're not quite sure what you like to see online, we Zoom with you or FaceTime with you, and we bring our phone around, right, to all of the different products. You go, oh, wait, pull that one and pull that one. And oh, let me see those two together. And we crisscross them, and we can run them outside, or, so you can see them in natural light and stuff like that. And then we just pop them in the mail and off you go. Yeah.
I love doing that. That's fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a lot of fun. I like it because I get to see how people put different colors together, which is one of my faves to see.
We do lives like that when we have puppies, when I have people over the country looking at puppies.
Yeah.
Lives in the puppy stall.
Yeah. That's fun. That sounds fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So at those fiber shows, do you have both your wool and?
Yep. We take our shop. We have a little shop here on the farm, and we empty the whole thing out and we bring it down. Yeah. We pack it up, and then, we're known for doing demos and education on the fly. Like people will stop by and they'll be like, oh, I just got a hackle, what do I do with it? And I'm like, oh, let me show you. And we'll grab a strict and we'll run off into the corner somewhere, and we'll start hackling, or I'm having problems with my spinning, and we'll sit down and spin. We're always drop spinning in there anyways. So it's we have a lot of fun. Probably too much.
Wonderful. Okay. So I want to open it up. There have been a few questions in the chat, but I would love it if anybody has questions. Now's the time. So anything
I've been rattling
anything about anything we've talked about that you would love to talk to Patty about.
I guess we answered him.
Oh, it's a quiet group tonight. We're a little later, so it's closer.
Yes. Everybody's probably snoozing.
Are we allowed to talk?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay. Hi, this is Kim. My question, and I don't even know if this is a question. I did a transparency weaving project one time with tow linen, and it was harsh, but it was very thin.
Yeah.
And
so it's typical. That's typical for weaving. Is especially if you're using it for like tea towels or something that you're not going to wear next to your skin. That was a wonderful way to use up that tow, because otherwise it's just waste, right? It's it's kind of like if you're going for comb top, typically you want your staple length to be over 3 inches, right?
Mhm.
So what do you do with that stuff that's shorter? Well, you make it into roving and you make another product out of it. So so it's kind of the same way. And tow is definitely going to feel coarser than what your line is going to. And they may not have scoured it as much because you don't have to set the twist for linen like you do with wool. So it could be that it hasn't been scoured yet, and if you wash that cloth really well, it'll come out. But we used to use what's called the Lindsay Woolsey cloth in order, because like back in the 1500s, right, if you want to be Bill Gates, you got into the wool industry, right?
Mhm.
Especially in the UK. So what they would do is they would take linen and or tow, and they would use that as the warp, and then they would use wool as the weft. And
Okay.
in Scotland, it was called quince. And sometimes they
Mhm.
called it a stuff dress, like Jane Eyre, in Charlotte Bronte's book, Jane Eyre. She's, they were like, oh, well, Jane wore a stuff dress. It was a poor person's dress. And it adds a little bit of strength to the wool. So if you had servants and things like that, they're on their knees and they were scrubbing, they couldn't afford for that wool to wear out, so they needed something to give strength. But they also wanted them to be warmer because that dress they wore it all year round. So
Right.
the wool gave warmth back into the linen. Yeah. Or the tow in a lot of areas. Yeah. Yeah. So definitely use that tow as much as you can, and save your line for anything that you're going to be wearing next to your skin, like tank tops
Okay.
or, shirts, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Skirts.
Yeah, because I have 8 ounces of on a cone or on a cone left.
Yep.
So I was trying to figure out what I could do with it. So would it be okay for like washcloths or something like
Oh,
that?
absolutely. Absolutely. The great thing about washcloths, my husband and my kids, they do this on the side of the sink, right? They get that
Hmm.
washcloth and then they plop and they leave it in there. So cotton, and I'm not knocking cotton at all, it's just the natural way of it. Cotton grows that bacteria that turns rancid. It gets all smelly and icky, right?
Right.
Linen doesn't grow that. It doesn't grow that. So you can leave it like that next to the sink and it won't get smelly. Just throw
Oh,
it in the washer.
that's good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I try to use up all of my extra linen on that. And you can make it look any way you want. You don't have to worry about it being perfect either. It's a washcloth.
Interesting
That's
because you
true, but
grew the mold on it first, right?
Yes, I know. It's so
But then it
wonky.
doesn't grow
Yeah.
mold.
And then it doesn't grow mold. Yeah. Yeah. I don't get it either. But yeah, no, it's fantastic the way it works like that. Especially my kids are special needs, there's no training them to be nice to the washcloth and lay it down on the side, I'm just up the creek. So yeah, so the linen doesn't get gross smelling. Yeah.
well, good. Yeah, I have to be real careful with it because my dogs love it. And my
Oh,
very first warp, they grabbed it and ran.
oh no. Yeah, mine don't pay too much attention to it. They like it when it grows. I have to put a fence around it because the peers like to wiggle their way into it and then flop down and make a nice cushy bed out of it. Which
Mhm.
once it's
They're
squashed,
breaking
it's
it for
done.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Once it's squashed, it's done for, so we have to put a fence around it to make sure. And we obviously we have to keep the sheep back because the sheep will just be like mowing it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like good stuff. Thanks for the garden, Patty, that sort of thing.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Are
Oh.
there any other questions? Oh, thanks. Yeah, we've been doing this for a little while, and I'm very lucky that I've had really fabulous teachers who have taught me along the way. They Cassie Dixon, if you ever get to take a class with her, she's absolutely fabulous. She's down south and she weaves geometric coverlets, historical coverlets, for like comforters and things like that. And they have like all of these wonky geometric shapes to them and stuff. They're really neat. And she usually does all natural. But she'll take like a water retted and pair it with a dew retted. So you get the two different colors while still being all natural. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyone else?
I'm curious because I'm like down the deep hole of colored cotton right
Mhm.
now. Are there different types of flax?
Yes.
Do
So
they
every
get
now and
different
then I'll get a
colors?
call. Well, you
Okay.
don't get different colors.
Okay.
You get the same color, but there's, I don't know how many varieties. It's not as much as sheep breeds. But like sheep breeds, each variation of flax has its own purpose. So like we used to plant Natalie and Marilyn. They got funny names. And there's a couple of others that are designed for fiber. Then you have ones that are designed for linseed oil, flax oil. So they're designed to go in a press and then for oil to come out of them. And then there's ones that are designed to have really good nutritional value. And that's where you start to make flaxseed or you put flaxseed in your yogurt and stuff like that. And so some of the seeds out there, you need to be careful about this. They treat them with an herbicide. So you always want to make sure that you don't eat a fiber seed because well mine aren't treated, but it's not going to provide you with any nutritional value. So we always make sure that we write do not eat on them. And then don't try to grow like the stuff that you buy in the grocery store for fiber. Every now and then somebody will call me and they're like, Patty, my seed won't grow. And I'm like, well, where'd you get it from? And they're like, Hannaford, which is a local grocery store. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to grow. Yeah. So, we have seed available right now. If you email us, we can package it. We can send you an invoice and package it out. And there's a few other places in the United States that get it. There's Heritage, I think, out of Pennsylvania that has some. I think they bring theirs in from Belgium. It's Belgium and Russia. Is still right where they still have the mills and they grow up by the acre and like hundreds of acres. They're really the linen hub of the world, as far as I know anyway. So yeah, but you can get seeds for sure in the States. Just make sure what you're looking for is flax for fiber versus oil or and linseed is great. Like you can use it for sealing barns. That's why barns used to be red, because the linseed would turn red. I use it for treating all of my raised beds boxes. I use the linseed oil instead of like paint or anything like that because I don't want to get into my soil. So, yeah. I know you could talk about linen for days.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, if you think of one, feel free to send me a message or an email.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for joining us. Patty, this was wonderful.
I'm so
It
glad.
was so informative and lovely, and I'm so excited to know about your farm now.
Yeah, we're here.
Wonderful. All
Have a
right,
great
guys.
night.
Have a wonderful evening. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.